Hi guys, well so far in our venture into the world of Intel Z390 we've looked at a number of brands, but we haven't had anything in from Gigabyte until now. This here is the new Z390 Extreme from Aorus, and as the name suggests, and just like the associated graphics cards, this board here represents the very best from Aorus, placing it right up there at the very top as their flagship model. Across Extreme you'll find a bunch of features not found on other boards, such as USB turbocharger for mobile devices, an OC Touch connector for use with Gigabyte's OC Touch card, triple M.2 slots, and supplementary VRM cooling involving a rear base plate to keep those VRM temps under control. Now you better be sitting down for this one. Extreme has an MSRP of a whopping $550 US, £630 in the UK. We don't actually have the Australian figures right now, but judging by those prices that we just mentioned, you should be able to sort of gauge and estimate how much it will be. So you will need pretty deep pockets for this one. Obviously it isn't designed for the average user, and in our review today we're going to be exploring all of the features and really weighing up if it really is worth that big asking price. Okay, well first of all let's go through the unboxing experience. So this is the packaging for Extreme. As you can see, pretty big box and very heavy as well. That board inside is carrying quite a bit of weight. Over on the back we've got a picture of the board, we've got the detailed specifications and then the significant features, so nothing out of the ordinary there, typical sort of thing for a motherboard. And inside the box we have the board first of all, obviously no anti-static bag there, there is a plastic cover and then the foam padding, so that gives you a bit of a preview as to what you're going to be getting. I'll just remove this out of the way for now. And then we've got the sticker sheet, if that's your sort of thing. And then we have these two boxes here. Now the first one is the RGB fan commander. So let's take the lid off this and show you what you get. So this is a hub which gives you additional fan headers and also LED strips. So that is a handy thing to have. That connects up to the motherboard. There is an associated cable, and actually if I just take the foam padding out, you can see there I've got all the cables, all those associated accessories, some cable ties as well, and an instructions guide there as well. And then last of all we have the accessories box, which has a lot of items included. I'm not going to go through each individual one, otherwise we'll be here till next week. But as you can see, we have the documentation, so user manual, multilingual installation guide, some cables there for the sensors, antennas for the 802.11ac and the Bluetooth 5, some cable ties there, LED strips. We've got the SATA cables, so we get 6 of those, case badge, SLI bridge in there, that is a rigid SLI bridge. We've got the OC cable. Now, if I just take this out, this is the OC Touch panel. That's the OC cable, so that connects to that panel, to the motherboard, and this gives you some extra options if you haven't seen one of these before. Very handy. You obviously get all these onboard buttons, get these switches here, and the clear CMOS and things like that, which is handy to have, but also the fan headers now. So beyond what you've got on the motherboard, and also that other hub, the fan commander, we also get these additional 6 headers, which is again handy to have, and just extends your cooling potential. Okay, so here is our Extreme. Overall, the board adopts an attractive design which should appeal to both gamers and enthusiasts. The board itself has a matte black PCB with a gunmetal tone used throughout for the heatsinks and covers. Looking more closely at the EPS CPU power connectors, you'll notice they have a metal surround, and so does that 24-pin ATX power. In fact, the 24-pin connector is also angled, which should go towards better cable management. And as we can expect, this board conforms to the ATX form factor, so it will fit inside most mid-towers. RGB lighting is an area which Extreme does not shy away from, as it includes illumination in a number of locations. All of this lighting can be customized using Gigabyte's RGB Fusion software, and inside that app there are plenty of different effects to choose from. Here are a few of the options.
coming through, coming through, coming through the noise. I'm floating through outer space. I'm lost and I can't find a way. Oh, all the lights going dark and my hopes destroyed. Help me, is anybody there? Save me, I'm running out of air. Calling out Mayday. Calling out Mayday.
As we step in for a closer look at the finer details, we first of all arrive at the CPU socket. This board here uses socket 1151 and is primarily designed for Intel's 9th generation of processors, such as the i9-9900K. However, if you do have a Coffee Lake CPU like the 8700K, then that is compatible too. Extreme uses a 16-phase digital VRM configuration which has extensive thermal cooling on both sides of the PCB. So as well as a thin stack on the top side, we have 4 copper heat pipes which run between the heat sinks on the top and bottom. The base plate on the underside of Extreme hides these pipes, but it also acts as a thermal pad itself. The overall objective here is really to remove as much heat as possible from the VRM department. And in our testing with the 9900K overclocked, the temperatures there of that VRM region remained under that 60-degree mark. So there are no corners being cut here, and this board is definitely reliable when we talk about heat transfer. Behind the top heatsink we have 2 8-pin CPU power connectors which point to this board being well equipped to take on overclocking. And as we've already pointed out, those connectors there have the steel surround too. Now for the fan headers we get a total of 8, which is more than you'd usually get on a mainstream board. Plus we also get the OC touch connector at the bottom of the board, which allows you to hook up the OC touch panel, which among other things gives you some extra headers too. As well as that, for RGB we have a series of 2 addressable LED strip headers and 2 RGB LED strip headers, along with 10 temperature sensors so you can keep an eye on the heat across the board. Not to mention we also get the RGB fan commander with even more support for additional fans, RGB and sensors, and so it's safe to say that Extreme is armed to the teeth with cooling support. Next we have the memory, which allows for dual channel DDR4 up to 64 gig up to 4266 MHz, and XMP2 is available as well. Now around that memory we've got even more features to take advantage of. First of all, on the far right we have the onboard power and OC buttons with reset CMOS and restart too, and so those will come in handy if you do have this configuration on a test bench. On the other edge there's a right angled 24-pin ATX with that steel surround and a right angled USB 3 header immediately next to that. Now that header is what Gigabyte term turbocharger, meaning that you're going to be able to recharge mobile devices a lot quicker. But to get that extra speed you will need to have either QC3 or Apple Fast Charge ready. We also get a USB 3.1 Gen 2 header. Turning to the storage department, we aren't left empty-handed either. There are 6 SATA 3 6G ports for SATA based drives, and there are a trio of M.2 slots which are all PCI Express Gen 3 X4. Usually we'd just get the 2 M.2s and maybe one of those would have a heatsink included. Well, with Extreme, all of those M.2s have been given heatsinks, one of which marries up to that huge heatsink covering the Z370 chipset just behind those SATA storage ports. Now moving on to the PCI Express, we have a selection of different options available here, and these include triple PCI Express 3.0 X16s and double PCI Express 3.0 X1s. And the modes for each of those X16s are 16, 8, and 4. And so unlike the high-end desktop platform, the mainstream 9th gen CPUs and Z390 only support 16 lanes, and so there is obviously still support there for multi-GPU configurations by way of AMD Crossfire or NVIDIA SLI, but if you are using a single card, then that top one is the best option, and all of those have been given this steel treatment to reinforce the slot. Now there are a few other little perks that arrive on Extreme along the bottom edge of the board. The first of those is that PCI connector, which supplies some extra juice for the GPU if you do need it. We have an LED debug panel for diagnostics. The codes for those are all in the manual. And we've already spoken about the OC connector, but right next to that we have a BIOS switch allowing you to jump between BIOS, and the SB switch there shifts between single mode or dual BIOS mode. Shifting over to the audio, which is right next to that PCI Express, we have a huge assortment of components. The package here is driven by Realtek's ALC1220 codec, and it is accompanied by Nichicon fine gold caps, along with those red Weimer caps, ESS Saber DAC, TVC oscillator, anti-pop circuit, separated left and right channels, and some other items like power regulators and impedance sensing. And so it's pretty obvious that Aorus aren't messing around when we're talking about sound quality on this model. It is built for strong audio too. Okay, and finally we have the rear I/O section of Extreme, and this gives us no shortage of connectivity. The options here are 2 antennas for use with the 802.11ac and Bluetooth 5 for wireless, 2 gigabit LAN ports, those are via the Intel i219V, and the other via Aquantia, which is capable of 10 gigabit, 4 USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type A ports, 2 USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type C ports, those are Thunderbolt 3, 2 USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type A ports, 2 USB 2 ports, HDMI 1.4 for video out, and then all of the audio ports there with optical out. And so nothing to really complain about there except perhaps replacing those USB 2s with the 3.1 instead. But apart from that, that back panel is loaded with options, even including 10 gigabit capabilities. And not to mention, we also have some RGB lighting too. Okay, so that is the Z390 AORUS Extreme. And so what should be pretty clear if you've been watching up until this point is that this board here leaves no stone unturned. You know, for a mainstream offering, it takes every feature, every attribute, and it maximizes on those possibilities, whether that is the overclocking, storage, audio, or even RGB. But you know, having said that, this board isn't for everyone. And the asking price of $550 630 UK pounds is a strong indicator of that. Extreme is aimed squarely at those performance enthusiasts and those overclockers with deep pockets. Now VRM cooling has been a contentious subject since the Z370 chipset, and Gigabyte has made a point of not falling foul of that pitfall with this board. As such, the thermal design goes over and above to keep those temperatures at bay. And even with an overclock applied, you're not going to see those temperatures go above 60 degrees. And speaking of overclocking, our best efforts with this board on our 9900K saw us reach 5 GHz as the best result, and no amount of tweaking the voltage or tweaking the settings in the BIOS allowed us to move beyond and gain stability over 5 gig. As is sometimes the case, the weakest link can sometimes be the CPU itself, and ours seems to be that sort of issue with that 5 gig mark, despite having such a nice selection of overclocking features there at our fingertips. So is this board for you? If you want every conceivable feature and money is no object, sure. But a vast majority of you, including myself, are going to conclude that the cost of Extreme for a mainstream board is overkill. Nevertheless, there are some great features on this model, and purely for interest's sake, it's been good to analyse it. But what do you guys think? Let me know what you think in the comments box below. As always, the full review for this particular board is going to be on the screen and in the description. All the testing, all the benchmarks are over there. And if you like this content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you guys next time.